Yes.
Okay.
The soul looked out from its felicity. It felt the spirit's interminable bliss. It knew itself deathless, timeless, spaceless, one. It saw the eternal, lived in the infinite.
So Sri Aurobindo speaks of the eternal, capital E on the eternal. And he says in the Essays in Philosophy and Yoga, that which is cannot perish. It can only lose itself. All is eternal in the eternal spirit. And then in the Life Divine, he tells us each is the whole eternal concealed. And again, he says the eternal is our refuge. All the rest are false values. The ignorance in its mazes, a self bewilderment of the soul in phenomenal nature. So powerful. And we've done the infinite before, so, but he does say that the infinite is not a sum of things, it is that which is all things.
Then, curious of a shadow thrown by truth, it strained towards some otherness to self. It was drawn to an unknown face peering through night.
I think this is the negative aspect that Mother speaks about when the gods turned against her. The god of love turned to hate, and she speaks about the four emanations, and two of them she was able to change. Strange because it shows my picture right up on the right hand corner. Hmm. Well, let's go back to Savitri because this is very
Yes,
important. This shadow that is thrown by truth,
yes.
straining towards some otherness of self. So, this is the aspect of the divine
Yes.
attempting or wanting to see other aspects of himself. And so he has the shadow that he throws by truth. And he's drawn to an unknown face peering through night. I think that's the next line tell us much more. So please continue there.
A void supernal whose immense excess, imitating God and everlasting time, offered a ground for nature's adverse birth, and matter's rigid, hard unconsciousness, harboring the brilliance of a transient soul that lights up birth and death and ignorant life.
A very, very important passage. Very important because he's telling us here that this negative infinity is a supernal void, a heavenly void, whose immense excess, he speaks about this immense excess that imitates God and everlasting time, but it also offers a ground for nature's adverse birth. And so we know that nature has an adverse birth because when we enter into the human body, we are certainly not conscious or perfect. It is an evolutionary thing because of matter's rigid, hard unconsciousness. And matter, of course, is a creative energy and it's a form of consciousness. But we see that matter is also dull and often inert and the slowest to make any progress. I mean, I know from my own body what it has gone through, much more than the mind or the vital has gone through. I've had 15 operations, 15 surgeries.
Just now, in the most recent
No,
one?
no, throughout my life.
Over time. Yes.
15 major, all major. Cancer, hernias, appendicitis, um, benign growths. I could go on and on. Removal of different parts of the body. So I know what that the body is also powerful. And this is what Shraddha keeps telling me. It's only the heart that you have to watch out for now. All the rest of you is fine. Well, he called it radiant. Harboring the brilliance of a transient soul. What is harboring that brilliance? Well, matter's rigid, hard unconsciousness is doing that. And this is what lights up birth and death and ignorant life on earth in our evolutionary movement upwards. So we can do a little more.
Yes.
We've got plenty of time.
A mind arose that stared at nothingness, till figures formed of what could never be. It housed the contrary of all that is.
And this is what Sri Aurobindo keeps going back to and telling us that what is impossible today is assured in the future. There is no impossibility. And figures formed of what seemingly could never be, but they formed. And that is the formation of our human bodies. And they house the contrary of all that is. And so the first thing Mother always tells us is that look inside of yourself and find the very things that you're complaining about. Very powerful statement. So this mind arises after a little consciousness comes into the body, some force comes into the vital nature, the force of life, the force to continue life, and then finally this mind comes and it actually um, houses the contrary of all that is. Such a powerful statement. So, a mind arose that stared at nothingness. Because when this creation occurs, there is nothingness. There's, there's not an Adam and Eve of heaven. There's just blank, inert matter. And it's the consciousness that has to get infused in matter so that we can progress in the evolution. And so these figures get formed of what could never be. And this matter housed the contrary of all that is. So all that is, of course, is beauty and love and everything. But now we're seeing that it housed also the contrary of all that is. And then Sri Aurobindo continues.
A knot appeared as being's huge sealed pause, its dumb support in a blank infinite, in whose abysm spirit must disappear. A darkened nature lived and held the seed of spirit hidden and feigning not to be.
Interesting. So we're seeing that a few things here are very important. So we'll go through those. The naught, of course, is the non-existence. And often it's spelled Nought, but Sri Aurobindo has spelled it Nought. In English, we often say Naught, but he uses naught with the O. So this naught appeared as the huge sealed cause of being. And pure being is, of course, the affirmation of the unknowable of itself. And it's the free base of all cosmic existence. So this is its dumb support in a blank infinite, in whose abysm spirit must disappear. But it doesn't disappear. We see that because he's going to go on and tell us a darkened nature lived and held the seed. So this darkened nature is living, it's existing, and it's holding the seed of what is to be or to become. And then he tells us it's holding that in this spirit that is hidden and feigning. Feigning is inventing or imitating deceptively, make believe, pretending not to be. So it's a difficult passage, but it's very important, and we should go on a little bit more because we're going to get into some other things here also.
Eternal consciousness became a freak of an unsouled Almighty inconscient, and breathed no more as spirit's native air. Bliss was an incident of a mortal hour, a stranger in the insentient universe.
Oh yes, what was that? Stranger in a strange universe, that famous science fiction book, uh, Stranger in the Insentient Universe, very close. So we'll go and look at that because this is so critical now. He's talking about this consciousness, this first initial evolution on Earth, and this eternal consciousness. The eternal consciousness has descended from the supermind, and descending from the supermind, it cannot descend fully because it would destroy everything. So it reduces itself in power, but it does not become, it still is eternal. It still is eternal consciousness, but it becomes a freak of an unsouled, so there's no soul here yet, almighty, inconscient, and we know we've gone through inconscience many times. And then we're going to see that it breathed no more as spirit's native air. Well, where it came from, there's no question that it breathed there, the spirit's native air, in those higher planes of the supermental. And therefore, bliss was simply an incident of a mortal hour. Are we clear so far in this whole passage? Yes?
Yes,
Good. Very
yes.
good. So let's go a little more. So it becomes a stranger in the insentient universe.
As one drawn by the grandeur of the void, the soul attracted leaned to the abyss. It longed for the adventure of ignorance and the marvel and surprise of the unknown. and the endless possibility that lurked in the womb of chaos and in nothing's gulf, or looked from the unfathomed eyes of chance.
Well, so let's look at it carefully. The soul becomes attracted to the opposite of itself, and therefore it leans. It doesn't say it goes into the abyss, it leaned to the abyss. And then he says it did that because it longed for the adventure of ignorance. And Sri Aurobindo tells us ignorance is the absence of the divine eye of perception, which gives us the sight of the supramental truth. So it's the non perceiving principle in our consciousness. And that's opposed to the truth perceiving conscious vision and knowledge. So, very, very clear that it longed for this adventure of ignorance and the marvel and surprise of the unknown. Not only that, but the endless possibility that lurked in the womb of chaos and in nothing's gulf. So, what is this possibility that lurks in the womb of chaos and in this gulf of nothing? Well, it's what's hidden from us now, and the occultists go into it. Mother did it with Theon in Algeria, and Theon's wife was an expert in it. We know about her. We know about Madame Blavatsky. We know about Neil, Alexandra David Neil in Tibet. You know some of her stories?
Some of them, no, I don't think, no, I'm not sure I know.
Well, one of the two of them that always touched me very deeply is she's sitting on a log and she's watching the mailmen go by, and they can cover 400 miles in an hour. And they're 1 foot above the air, and they're just like that, going that fast. And she's watching them passing by. The second one is a tiger, a tiger in the jungle, not a tame tiger. And it comes up to her, and she looks at it, and it nods to her and walks away. That kind of power. So it's extraordinary, these people who have this occult power. So this endless possibility that lurked in the womb of chaos. So in the womb of chaos, there is an endless possibility. And that's why we have to see these lines that connect to each other, that are so important. So this endless possibility lurking in the womb of chaos and in this gulf of nothing, or it even looks out from the unfathomed eyes of chance. And then we read a little more and we'll stop for tonight. But we have to go through it and then you have to read the whole thing. Get tired?
Should I read it from the beginning?
Yeah. But let's do a little more.
The soul looked out from its felicity. It felt the spirit's interminable bliss. It knew itself deathless, timeless, spaceless, one. It saw the eternal, lived in the infinite. Then, curious of a shadow thrown by truth, it strained towards some otherness of self. It was drawn to an unknown face peering through night. It sensed a negative infinity, a void supernal whose immense excess, imitating God and everlasting time, offered a ground for nature's adverse birth, and matter's rigid, hard unconsciousness, harboring the brilliance of a transient soul that lights up birth and death and ignorant life. A mind arose that stared at nothingness, till figures formed of what could never be. It housed the contrary of all that is. A knot appeared as being's huge sealed cause, its dumb support in a blank infinite, in whose abysm spirit must disappear. A darkened nature lived and held the seed of spirit hidden and feigning not to be. Eternal consciousness became a freak of an unsouled Almighty inconscient and breathed no more as spirit's native air. Bliss was an incident of a mortal hour, a stranger in the insentient universe. As one drawn by the grandeur of the void, the soul attracted leaned to the abyss. It longed for the adventure of ignorance and the marvel and surprise of the unknown and the endless possibility that lurked in the womb of chaos and in nothing's gulf, or looked from the unfathomed eyes of chance.
Good reading. So improved. Oh,
Thank you.
makes me happy to hear you. Now you see, when we put it all together, we see exactly what is happening.
Yes,
Everything is sort of which harmonized in these
yes,
lines that follow each other and tell us what's
yes,
happening. And that's the beauty of Sri Aurobindo's writing, that
yes,
it is mantric, and if we read these lines with that aspiration to understand the mantric consciousness, then those each of those lines are vibrating at a certain amount of decibels per second, which is the basis of namajapa.
yes,
And so this vibration of each of these per second gives us the mantra of Savitri. But we can't read it without reading it out loud,
yes,
because there is no mantra if you don't read it out loud. It's okay to study, but basically we have to read it. You're doing so
yes.
well.
Thank you, Narad.
Thank you.
Thank
Namaste.
you, Namaste. Take care. See you next week.
Okay, wonderful.
Thank you.